I think we're surprisingly closer than we might think. I think what we're seeing is, Gary Gensler is trying to regulate through enforcement, as many have noted. I don't think it's healthy. I think Congress is starting to turn around and understand the challenge is the average age of our Congress people is 80 plus.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Voice of Crypto. We are coming in live from Token 2049 Singapore, and I have with me a really interesting guest, Blake Kim from Myosin. Hi Blake, it's great to have you on our podcast today. How are you doing?
Hi, doing well.
On this sunny afternoon.
It's a little hot, it's a little humid, but there's a lot of people and it's really fun. So
absolutely.
Right.
Despite the bear market blues, this seems to be glimmering that
100%.
The event does not look like we're in the bear market. What are your views on the changing attitudes regarding Web3 space?
Yeah, I think actually right now there's a couple things. So as someone who's based in New York and works primarily in Western markets, there's definitely a bear sentiment with regulation and whatnot, but that's why we're here, right? Because I think in Asia, they recognize the potential that crypto and Web3 can really bring for companies, people, enterprises, institutions all over the world. They're creating regulation and people are really excited here. So it's really been fun to come here and hang out with folks. And I think the other thing we're really starting to see is this rise of consumer crypto, right? Or this narrative of Web 2.5, and people starting to recognize that Web3 fundamentally is infrastructure. And once we can start to, I think what we're starting to see with gaming and enterprises and others is the rise of consumer applications that are going to be a lot more friendly, a lot more exciting for regular people that use Web3 on the back end. So really excited to do more there.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about your role at Myosin and what does your firm do?
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders of Myosin. I'm also the head of product and community. The way we describe Myosin is we are the ultimate marketing network. Now what that really means is we are a marketing DAO. And as a DAO, what we're focused on is there's two sides. There's the agency business and there's the product studio business. The whole reason we exist really is that traditional agencies, it's a broken model. So basically, a typical agency, as it scales, it doesn't scale, basically, because the bigger an agency gets, the more operating costs you have, the more bloat you have, the more partners take profits off the top. You have the army of freelancers who are doing the hard work, they're grinding day in and out, but they get no rev share equity benefits, right? They just get paid an hourly rate. So our idea has been, can you aggregate and pull together the best marketers around the world, right? Strategists, community managers, content creators, designers, PR partnerships, product, all the best people around the world, globally, freelancers, and actually work together, right? And align economic incentives so that we can actually work with Web3 companies, all types. So some of our clients are Web3 Auth, Magna, and others, to blockchains like Polygon, Ripple, Solana Mobile, as well as Web2 enterprises like Shiseido. So we can kind of do a bit of everything because we're global, we're flexible, we have members all over the world.
Absolutely. I love the word marketing DAO, how you're making marketing decentralized. Marketing for Web3 is a lot different from marketing from Web2. It's mostly because the difference in attitude between Web2 and Web3 consumers. So how do you come up with some of the best marketing plans for enterprises?
Yeah, so I actually think it's two things, right? So I think with Web3, something we've talked about a lot is if you're trying to, I think it depends on the audience, right? Because even with enterprise, sometimes enterprise is trying to do Web3 activations for traditional audiences. Sometimes they're trying to reach degen audiences. So I think taking it back to first principles, it's really a question of who you're trying to reach, right? Are you trying to reach the degen, whether you're a Web3 company or a brand, or are you trying to reach the normal person and convince them? So with Web3 marketing, if you're trying to appeal to the normal folks, you really don't have, you have very few opportunities for kind of like more traditional paid growth marketing. So we actually have already developed a framework, so we call it, it's kind of like three-legged stool around community, content, and partnerships. Those are the three flywheels, right? Because the beauty of Web3 and what really attracts people within this space to Web3 is this idea of community ownership. So number one, it's, who is the community, how are you appealing to them, and how are you speaking to them directly, and how are you building that community? How are you creating content that can help educate said community, and how are you working with this community to actually help promote more user-generated content? And then that third leg with partnerships is it's such a small space that it's really important to actually think about how are you cross-pollinating your community, your content with others within the ecosystem. So if you can do all three of those, that is very much like our framework for Web3 marketing, and I could talk all day about like Web2 and how we but that'll go. Yeah.
So communities are so important for Web3 projects, right? For projects that are just starting out, how do they build effective communities, and how do they get the right kind of community managers and target the right audience? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's always first principles, which is like, I think what we see so often in the space is lack of clarity, I guess, on like, what is this community? Why does it matter? What is your vision? You know, you'd be surprised. I think there are a lot of people who like, they scratch the surface level of like, hey, we're a PFP or we're a NFT project that does this thing, and we're like, I think we've evolved past that space now, and what we really need is companies that are inspiring and helping people understand, like, this is our mission, this is what we're passionate about. So number one, it's like, who are you as a company? Then it's identifying your customers, so saying, okay, well, of those people, you know, who are these people? What do they care about? You know, etc. And then the reality is, you know, every community is different, right? Because if you're trying to talk to DeFi degens versus gamers versus, you know, DAO maxis, right? Each of these groups has different incentive structures and things they care about, right? And I think it's really about how are you creating this how are you creating a value system and an economic incentive system where people can get excited about what you're doing. So creating referral programs, you know, really creating more meaningful community through events, and not just making everything, hey, you'll earn 500% yield on this thing if you just join our community. That's not community, right? That's just a bunch of people wanting to join the casino, right? And that's not sustainable, and that's what we saw in the last bowl, and I'm hopeful that moving forward, we'll probably still see more of that, but I'd like to see less of that and more meaningful community building and community engagement.
Hopefully we learn from our mistakes and move forward in the right way. Absolutely. So you're based out of the United States, and we all know that it's been a little bit crazy there in terms of regulations, which has sort of impacted the larger crypto narrative as well across the globe. How far do you think we are from better regulations, more global standards around cryptocurrencies, and governments having those conversations that are really important?
Well, I would say for the US, I mean, obviously, this is just my own opinion. I think we're surprisingly closer than we might think. I think what we're seeing is, you know, Gary Gensler is trying to regulate through enforcement, as many have noted. I don't think it's healthy. I think Congress is starting to turn around and understand the challenge is the average age of our Congress people is 80 plus at this point. So it's a little challenging, but I, for once, am happy that lobbyists are doing what they're doing, and the crypto lobby is going strong. We have Republicans and Democrats on either side starting to work towards more meaningful regulation. I think what we're seeing with Gary Gensler in the courts, that's starting to change rapidly. So every court case he's facing, he's basically getting slapped down because judges are realizing, hey, you said this wasn't a security, now you're going around and changing your mind, you can't do that. Right, so I think actually within the next year or two, I'm not saying we're gonna see a complete, you know, global framework in the U.S., but my hope is we'll at least see some stablecoin regulation, which could be major. I think if Bitcoin ETFs and ETH ETFs even open up, that in itself could create tremendous momentum. In Europe, we know we have MiCA, I think it's the MiCA framework.
MiCA.
So that's already happening. It's not perfect, but it's good to have something, right? And so we're starting to move towards there, and I think in just the next year or so, we'll see more, and in the next 5 years, hopefully we'll really start to see this all start to come together.
So this recent chain analysis report said that developing markets, especially in Asia, with India working a lot on their grassroots crypto adoption, there's a lot of chance of boom of Web3 in these markets. What is your take on this, and what geographies do you think are some of the top geographies for Web3 acceleration?
So actually, it's funny. So India, basically, because I think if you look at the statistics, right, it comes down to a couple things. I think birth rate and population growth is a key thing. We know that China's plateauing, whereas India's continuing to boom, has one of the youngest populations on the planet, will be soon almost a majority of the English-speaking internet at some point. So I know that within India, the regulation is a little bit restrictive right now. I'm optimistic things might turn in the future. And at the same time, I think Southeast Asia, right? There's so much stuff happening around gaming. There's so much stuff happening around just value, right? And then Africa as well, right? So there's a lot. basically, I think, as an American, I think a lot of us are very privileged to not ever have to think about, well, what's crypto's use case? But in many other countries, particularly developing countries or countries where the governments are not as stable, the value is very clear, right? Having a trustless currency, having currency that no government can necessarily just control and inflate away, or like that is the core principle of crypto, which eventually becomes Web3 and blockchain, and these things are all interconnected. So really excited. Yeah.
Absolutely. If you look at the low-income countries like Nigeria, India, Vietnam, they've been ramping up their progress in terms of usage of cryptocurrency or just adoptability. If we look at institutional investment, it plays a key role in how the sector moves, right? And the bear market sort of slapped institutional investors back on their knees. Do you expect institutional investors to sort of get back into the space? Are they already doing it? What do you think?
100%. So actually, if you look at the statistics right now, I mean, BlackRock, one of the largest, I always mix up BlackRock and Blackstone, but one of the largest wealth managers in the world, right? They already own. They are already. I was looking at. I read something on Twitter the other day. As part of their portfolio, they are already invested heavily into Bitcoin, Bitcoin miners. They're deep in the space already. I think everyone's looking for proxies into how to get into the market. I've talked to many family offices even here that are understanding that even in a high interest rate environment, if you look statistically at the returns that something like Bitcoin or ETH or more stable blue chip cryptos, which frankly that's the only thing institutions will touch, rightfully so. The return over time is significantly better, right? It's the best performing asset in the world. And that's, I think, why people are so excited for the Bitcoin ETF. There's about 20 applications just ready to go. They're ready to go. ETH ETFs are now like becoming a thing. So I think in just the next year or two, as soon as there's a flip of the switch, we're going to see billions, if not trillions of dollars enter the market. And what we have to understand is the institutions are at such a large scale that if just 1% of their portfolio, which is realistically probably what they'd allocate, that would still be just a tsunami, I guess, of money that could drastically change these market conditions and actually solidify crypto's place in the global market, because then it's legitimized when the largest institutions start to adopt.
For retailers and noobs, as we call them in this space, or beginners, privacy and security has been a major concern. Even education of just how the space works. So how do you think enterprises should approach educating their user base?
I think it's a couple things. So I think, well, that's literally what we work with institutions and enterprises on, right? Because I think we see it all the time. We talk to companies every day. Even here at the conference, I was just at a lunch, and we're hearing these challenges because I think with blockchains, SaaS tools, and all these Web3 companies, they're all trying to sell to enterprise. The reality is enterprise has a hard time. They'll say, okay, that's cool, but how do I implement this? How do I communicate to my users the end value? And that's where you need someone like us as Myosin, as strategic consultants, as marketers, to help kind of bridge these two worlds, right? Because the blockchain can't actually do the marketing campaign. They can't actually do the strategy behind it. So you need someone like us to actually work with the CMO and the innovation team to help then educate further to the end consumer, right? Because I think something we talk about all day is, the end consumer doesn't care about private keys, seed phrases. It's just like if in the early internet, if we still had to, type in our DNS and our IP address, and we don't do that, right? We just type in an email address or a website. That's just like your ENS or what it should be, right? So I think that's the world we're all headed towards. We're not there yet, but I think, we want to help enterprises get there. And so, I know we say it a lot in this industry, but it is still so early.
It is.
And there's just still so much opportunity for everyone for all of us to collaborate and do something cool.
Absolutely, very well said. Any final closing thoughts before we wrap the interview up?
I think that's it. I'm just really excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great chat.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.